Welcome to VintageDrumsTalk.com. You've reached the interviews page, and I have got a special interview. This is something I've been waiting for a long time. I've got somebody here that most of you know. If you're a seasoned collector, there's no way you could have not heard about this person. I'm telling you, he is the leading snare drum collector in the entire world. He's made milestones, and he's very prominent in the vintage drum community. I speak of no other than Mr. Mike Curotto. Yes, Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing excellent. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic, and I'm so privileged to have you finally in the studio here with me. We've been doing these interviews. We've had Harry Cangany, Mark Cooper, and now we've got Mike Curotto. I'm beside myself. In fact, I'm sitting right over there. You can see me. Oh, you know, Mike, things are special right now because the folks don't know there's a little story going on here between you and I. We've just done a little project together, and it's very important, and it's going to be coming out in our video from the 2012 Chicago show, where we got together with Bunny Carlos and Mark Cooper and Dave Brown, and we discussed the newly discovered 14th Slingerland Black Beauty, ladies and gentlemen. I must tell you, there's been another one found. Last year we talked about the 13th Slingerland Black Beauty, and Mike weighed in on that last year. But this year I'm blessed, seriously, because what are the chances to have number 13 and then in the same year to find number 14? But that's not all of the story. Mike Curotto plays a big part in this story. Mike, you were at the interview, and you offered to help me out with this, as did all the rest of our collectors that day. I want you to pick it up here and just tell the world and our vintage drum community what role you played in Slingerland Black Beauty number 14.
I'd be happy to. So, as we talked at the show, you had mentioned that you got you've unearthed the 14th one, but you just had the rims and the shell.
That's right.
So I said, well, I can get that puppy up and running for you and restore it and make it look, it'll still look its age, but it'll be nice and cool. Obviously the parts have to be found. So from what I got from you was the rims and the shell.
Right. Now, Mike, you've had a lot of experience with engraved, well, say Black Beauty type drums in the future, and I remember hearing that you had been working on, the shells and getting that whole method down. And you've published just exactly what you do with like Ludwig Black Beauties, but we're dealing with a Slingerland Black Beauty, very similar. But why don't you tell us exactly what you did? I sent this off to Mike. I mean, we had discussed it at the show, whether should it go to Adrian Kirschler, the famous artisan in the Italian Alps who is famous for doing the Ludwig Gold Triumphals, and we've talked about that before. But what we ended up doing was Mike and I struck up a deal, and Mike took over the whole restoration, and we're going to tell you all about it right now. What'd you do, Mike? I sent it out to you. You took it out of the box, and what'd you do?
Well, first things first, I got the shell, and there's this lacquer stripper called Citrus Strip, and it's pretty, it's all the biodegradable and all politically correct and all that stuff, so it works great. It's easy on the nose.
And that's, you can buy that, the consumer...
Ace Hardware, yeah.
Ace Hardware, okay, great.
Yeah, great. And other places, I'm sure Home Depot and Lowe's and all those other places have something like it.
Now, when you got the shell, when you pull it out of the box, I mean, tell me, what did you think? Because at the show, I was showing everyone these enlarged pictures, just like I did last year of number 13, which happens to be sitting right here on the desk. We'll show you a little bit of this later, folks. But Mike had some pictures to look at, remember? And then when you actually had it in your hands, how did it look to you?
Well, like I told you from the photos, I'd have to get it in my hands to judge whether to just try to maybe polish up the existing lacquer on there, and or strip the lacquer and have it relacquered. And I thought it needed to be just stripped. You know, the old lacquer, you know, it just gets not flaky, but kind of cracked, or some parts are stronger than the other, or shinier than the other. So I stripped it. I just stripped it down to the gunmetal, as they call it. You know, the black nickel.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily the Slingerland and the Ludwig black nickel are pretty hardy. So this stuff just takes the lacquer off, doesn't hurt the finish at all.
Now, there were some issues, and I had expressed that to you when we talked before I sent the shell to you, that I was concerned. And folks, I'm gonna put these pictures up right now for you. The same pictures that I sent to Mike and we were looking at the show. There were some scrapes and scuffing on the shell that I was concerned with. There was an area that was, unfortunately, the person who owned this beforehand was trying to do something. They were rubbing, cleaning, I don't know what, but those marks were there. But there was also what appeared to be scuffing behind the scroll work engraving. And this is where I was so pleased when Mike sent me the shots back. What did you discover there, Mike, when you saw that scuffing and you decided it was in the lacquer?
Yeah, it was the lacquer, definitely. Now, it would be like, you know, just any kind of lacquer, anything, it just wears, you know. So there's parts that are better than others, but it gives the illusion that the gunmetal's messed up. But it's really the covering over the gunmetal, which is the lacquer. So when you strip that, then you're down to the bare shell, the bare, nickel, the bare gunmetal, as Ludwig calls it, or, you know, the black nickel plating.
Right.
And then you see the real life where, you know, any scratches or dings
chips,
or things.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
But those, you know, that's just what the shell is. Someone near the butt plate side looks like they tried to rub down the finish and got some of it down to the brass, but luckily they either dumb luck or they knew that they at least tried it on the butt plate side at least. It's not that bad. But going back to the shell, once I got all the old lacquer off, and then my guys at Avenue Plating, these guys are the guys that plate anything for me or give me the nice clear coat lacquer on the shell, and these guys make my hobby fun.
Now all the examples that you've sent. Now Mike sends me emails. Okay, he sends it to VintageDrumsTalk.com, and we post them on page for Mike. He's in the collector's showcase. Go look at that. I'm over there. Dave Brown has a page. Check it out. Mike's got 3 pages going, but they've done a lot of work on those drums for Mike, and they've done some pretty amazing things. They work with metal, and they work with plating also.
Yeah, they plate everything but chrome.
Okay.
And then sometimes, again, a lot of the drums just needed to be cleaned, which meant sometimes when nickel gets this real age on it, it gets really cloudy. And I usually clean and polish things by hand because I haven't evolved to the buffing wheel yet.
Uh-huh.
But they had this big tank of this industrial soap solvent or something, and they dip these things in there. It foams off all the schmutz stuff that's on there. And then on a couple of drums, where the rims or things are just really beyond my expertise, they'll put it on the buffer and they'll what they call color it. Coloring in plating terms means to just polish up the nickel to have a nice, you know, shine to it.
Good. I've never heard that term.
They really replate very little for me. It's mostly either helping me clean up stuff, or in the drum that I did for you, there was some major plating, which we'll talk about too.
Right.
So getting back to the shell then, your shell on number 14, so once I got it all, the old lacquer off, and then cleaned it up, and once you get get the lacquer off, I always go through it again. There's a couple of spots where maybe the lacquer didn't come off, but it starts to turn white, like it's affected. It just has. I just didn't wipe it off. So I always go through that with some Goo Gone or something like that, just to keep the shell down to the metal, the gun metal. And once that's done, then I bring it to the guys at Avenue Plating, and my guy Brian there. They got a nice spray booth, and gets it on there and takes about 30 seconds at the most, and then we leave it hanging for about 10 minutes and dries off, and then that's the photo I sent you of the shell after we did that. I always kind of like to do the shell first. It kind of gets me going. It's something
we're going to put that up for you
quick.
right now. We're going to put that up right now so they can see it. You know, I was really shocked, Mike, at how quickly you did this whole thing. In fact, guys, as we're speaking right now, I have not received the drum yet. Mike just put it out today. It's coming back to me. I'll have it in a week, okay? And I can't wait to get my hands on it and see it in person. But he did send some photos along the way. Some of this work that you had to do on the lugs was pretty interesting. Now, I must mention the lugs. Right. Dave Brown, the famous English collector, was so gracious enough as to provide a whole set of lugs for us to use in this restoration, because at the show I asked everybody, let's all work on this together, and he really came through. So kudos to Dave Brown. He's really played an integral part in this restoration. But there was one thing. They didn't quite fit, but Mike came up with a fix for that. What did you do, Mike?
Well, yeah, like there were definitely Slingerland lugs. There's no way a Ludwig lug would fit because the Slingerland spacing's way bigger, way more far apart.
Okay.
So and then Dave said they came off a Wood Artist model, so they just barely would not fit. We're talking, you know, maybe a 64th of an inch.
Wow.
You know, and
that's frustrating.
Yeah. So what I did, and you told me this too. So what I did on a couple of them just fit naturally, so that was nice.
Good.
And then a couple of them I just put them on a piece of steel and, you know, put a piece of wood on top and lightly tapped, and the end balls there on it, you know,
right.
They seat maybe a little more, and I was able to get a couple like that done too. And then you just have to be careful you don't pound too hard, because then if the end balls, you know, the end of it, if they get pushed down too far, then you start banging into the threaded part.
Right.
So you just gotta be careful there.
Are you using a rubber mallet to do that?
Yeah, actually, what did I use? I know I used I used a regular hammer, but the wood on top was buffer, so you weren't hitting metal against metal.
Yeah.
So on a couple of the lugs, they just, you know, seated just a little bit, and they fit in the holes of the shell. And then a couple, though, they wouldn't go. So I had to, the part that goes into the shell and receives the attachment screw inside on top of the cup washer, I just had to file one side. Just enough. Yeah, it's barely enough, just enough to get a little bit of so it would fit in the hole. And then once I got it in the hole nicely, then the screw and the cup washer pushed it through and held it nice and tight. So
Great.
It wasn't the thought of it was more shocking than getting it done. You know, 'cause they were fairly easy to manipulate, and you know, so I showed you that. I got them all on the drum, and just before I got them plated, I sent you that photo too.
I got that. They weren't even plated yet. It was just nice to see them fitting.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll tell you, it was a rush for me because Mike kept me included in this all the way along. Now, normally restorations like this, you know, you send something off and they just say, "Look, you'll get it when you get it," you know.
Right.
But
right.
Mike, he was on top. I got to tell you, he did this in less than 2 weeks. I'm shocked.
July 1st to July 6th.
That's right.
the actual working time. You know, it took time for you to send it to me and all that.
I'm so flabbergasted. I mean, when I get it, we'll show you. You know, we're going to put number 13 and 14 side by side. And speaking side by side, Mike took his 5x14, which is only one of these Slingerland Black Beauties he has, because you also have a 6.5, don't you?
Yep, right.
Okay.
In your photo there, it's right below it.
Yeah, we put the two on top of each other, and
Yeah.
it was a nice comparison.
Yeah.
So you also had to do a little pounding of dents.
Oh yeah. You had a couple of dents. I had a couple of dents at the 3-point strainer.
Yeah.
You know, they're just, and you know, usually that's the things that protrude out. So when you drop the drum, you know, any of the lugs or the strainer or butt plate are going to get, you know, smashed a little. So there was nothing major, just pounded it out a little bit, and at the butt plate too, and then just a couple of little dings. If there's major dings, then I take it to Avenue because the other brother knows how to. Well, Brian too, but Les knows. So they got all the. I guess they're like the equivalent of like when you dent a car and you go in from inside and you have that rounded piece of steel kind of rounds out the metal and like a brass horn guy, you know.
Right. Oh, yeah. So the shell really, that was all you're doing mostly, right? And then when it came to plating, you have all this stuff copper plated, right? Avenue.
Yeah. So the shell again, they clear coated it, but I pounded all the dents out. And pound is a more drastic word. They really just needed some very little hitting.
I'm glad of that.
Yeah. And so that's pretty much how the shell, and then the tube lugs. So then you needed, 20 tension rods,
right,
and 20 tension rod washers,
right, clips,
20 Slingerland clips, which I had actual Slingerland clips. If you notice the top, the part that hangs over.
That comes right over the hook.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
It's a little shorter than Ludwig ones.
Yes, I can see that on the number 13 that I have here. That's very obvious.
So we had 20 that we had to get. Then you needed a 3-point strainer, complete, you know, with the thumb screw and the extension lever that has the stamp Slingerland on it. You got to have that, and then a butt plate. And you notice the butt plates on those are a little bit wider than not the whole pattern, but the actual piece, the bar and the piece.
Right. I see
a tad wider than Ludwig or Leedy ones. So I had a couple of those laying around, so I was able to find you a good one.
Just have them laying around. You have a nice stash, then.
I have an extensive stash.
This came in handy.
You need it. See, this is how this restoration came out.
Yeah.
Because I had the parts, you know.
Yeah.
And so let's see. That was so the tension rods, the washers, tension rod wash. Oh, the stuff you sent from Dave. Coming off a wooden drum had just flat washers.
Right.
But on the metal drums, they have cup washers.
Right.
Brass cup washers.
Now,
right. I have a ton of those, so I put those in.
After getting them coppered, all these pieces had to be coppered down at Avenue Plating, and which they did them in lightning speed. And then, Mike, all it was a matter of your expertise at using Nicholas spray, right? Little Nicholas gold tinted lacquer.
Yeah, the whole trick to this is when you get it copper plated, you know, they polish it, and then we tried just giving a little bit of antiquing where they dip it in this solution that darkens the copper just a little.
Okay.
And on the rims, it came out okay, but I wasn't thoroughly happy. It didn't look but this is great. This stuff just comes right off with polish. So like with my Cape Cod polishing.
Yeah, we're showing that right now. We're showing the rims. And you can see what he's talking about, that with this antiquing. But really, the whole look of the thing is just magnificent.
Yeah.
When you see what we started with, and the fact of what it is, it's number 14. And I got to tell you, Mike, I feel I'm very privileged to have you working on this. I'm so pleased that you were able to do this in such a short amount of time. And to get everything right, you know, to have those parts in your stash, I'm elated. And I know that next week I'm going to be partying on Monday night, folks, because I'm going to have my very own 14th Slingerland Black Beauty in my possession. It's going to be terrific. And I owe it all to Mike Curotto, Dave Brown, my good collector friends. That's what it's all about with collecting. When you find pieces like this that are worth putting the effort and the money into, and all the time and care and knowledge, and just like Mike does with all this stuff, it's euphoric. Seriously, and I know you felt that feeling many times, Mike.
Oh yeah.
Doing
Oh, yeah.
you know with all the stuff, with all the 500 and whatever number you have. That's you get that feeling every time. So
Yep.
I got to tell you, Mike, thanks from the bottom of my heart for helping me with this restoration. I now have a 14th Slingerland Black Beauty that's just going to stay in my collection, my permanent collection, because I'm an end user basically. I'm not a dealer,
Yeah,
kind of
me
like
too.
you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely.
So we've got
And your drum. What's nice adding to the plating is I tell them leave the age. So
Yes.
any of the little things,
Very
the
important.
wear scratches on the hardware,
yeah.
they just leave it. So what you have, I think, is a drum that's clean, nice looking, but I think it's still, I call it age appropriate. It just looks its age. It's just clean.
Folks, you're seeing restoration Mike Curotto style. This is the Curotto method, and this is very important. I am pleased. Mike, thanks so much for doing this restoration for me. I can't thank you from the bottom of my heart. I got to tell you, there's going to be more. We're going to hear more from Mike Curotto. We've got a lot because he's going to be a regular contributor. We've got so much to talk about in the future, and this is just part of it. Thanks so much for tuning in to VintageDrumsTalk.com. Mike, thank you very much. It's been an honor.
It's been a pleasure on my side and an honor also.
All right. Take care, my friend.
Okay.
We'll see you again.
Yep.